My name is Lee McCoy, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's panel discussion entitled Developing Resilience During this COVID Season. As some of you may know, the Aging and Spirituality Committee has been offering an annual spring conference for more than 10 years. Last year, however, our conference was derailed by COVID, but this year we've taken our plan, we've leveraged some of the popular technology, and we're offering you a virtual online conference. Today's panel discussion, a moderated panel discussion, will be the first of two parts. Today's discussion will offer you the theory behind the topic of resilience, and we have three wonderful panel members to share some of their ideas. And then in 3 weeks, we're going to offer you an opportunity to participate in a virtual online workshop. And I'm going to tell you more about that workshop at the end of today's session. So right now, I'd like to begin by introducing our panel and our topic. And I'm just going to do a little PowerPoint slideshow. So, developing resilience during this COVID season. Here is our panel, and I'd like to introduce them one by one to you. Our first panel member, Gerardo Quintanar, was born in Mexico, moved to Canada in 1986. He has a BA in philosophy and a PhD in theology, and he's worked for a number of local agencies. He's worked at the Catholic Centre for Immigrants, St. Paul University, and since 1999 was Director of Spiritual Care at CHIO and Nielsen House. He retired in 2019 from that job, but has returned to CHIO to provide some support during this COVID pandemic. Our next panel member is Patricia Marsden-Dole. Patricia retired from the Canadian Foreign Service and has since been engaged in a number of organizations dealing with a variety of issues related to aging. She's also the Social Justice Coordinator for the Catholic Archdiocese of Ottawa, and she's chair of our COA Spirituality and Aging Committee. She has a doctorate of ministry that explored the culture of aging in an aging society. Our third panel member, Brenda Verch, is also a member of the COA Spirituality and Aging Committee. Brenda has an MA in Counseling and Spirituality and is a mental health counselor. She has a counseling practice where she works with adults of all ages. She's also a senior advisor with Tea and Toast, where she helps seniors and their families find appropriate housing in retirement homes. And I'm your moderator, Lee McCoy. I worked for 30 years as a college professor and administrator, and now I work in the area of spiritual gerontology. I sort of think of myself as an anam cara, which is a Gaelic word for soul friend. And I see my goal as helping people move towards this concept of gerotranscendence, which is a psycho-spiritual state of peace and joy that one achieves in later life. So let's look at what we mean by resilience. I have 3 definitions, and then we're going to talk to our panel members and see what they have to say. First of all, there was a physics definition, and that's where resilience originally comes from. It's the ability of an elastic material, such as rubber or animal tissue, to absorb energy and then release that energy as it springs back to its original shape. So if you think of an elastic being pulled and then it springs back to an original shape, that's essentially where resilience came from. Then psychology adopted it, and a psychological definition of resilience is the ability to mentally or emotionally cope with a crisis and return to pre-crisis status fairly quickly. And then I found a third definition that's sort of just a very practical definition. The ability to be happy or successful, etc. again, after something difficult or bad has happened. So that'll get you thinking about resilience. But let's hear what our panelists have to say. Gerardo, I'm going to start with you. What does resilience mean to you?
Resiliency, I have an image that clarifies for me what resilience is all about. I come from a tropical country where there are significant tropical storms. And resiliency, you can see it when the high winds hit, that the tall trees suffer a lot. They are uprooted. But the humble grass, who just bend unto the powerful wind, recovers very quickly. So that gives me the sense that resilience is humility, the capacity to bend, not to stand tall. And I think it's one of the characteristics of the human spirit is to be humble, to realize that there are things that we cannot face, that we just have to let go so that we can bounce back. That is resiliency for me, an experience of humility against a difficult situation like COVID.
Absolutely. What a wonderful image, that idea of a tree that resists being uprooted, but the grass that gives in just bends and then comes back. That's a beautiful image. Patricia, what about for you? What does resilience mean for you?
Well, taking another example out of everyday life, I think that resilience means being able to live with being stuck on hold. I think and we all know that experience when we try to call telephone companies or the government lines or anything else. And so it's that sense of expectation that something will happen, something good will happen at the end if I can just hold on. So just to repeat it, I think that the pandemic for many people has given us the feeling of being stuck on hold. And how do we live with that?
Absolutely. How do we live with that? That's going to be the question, but hopefully we'll have some answers today. And Brenda, what about for you? What does resilience mean to you?
I agree with both of those as the ability to bend and the ability to adapt to being stuck on hold. To me, it also means that truly that ability to adapt and to accept what's happening in life, in our world, and accept that we can't change everything. There's always, there's so much going on that is out of our control, and we just have to live with that. But then to also realize that we are in control of our lives, and there are things that we can control and we can adapt to. And that's where the resiliency comes in, to recognize that what we are in control of and what we can do for ourselves.
We're getting some clues of this concept of resilience, adapting, acceptance, humility, waiting, all of these characteristics. So let's get a little more personal now and sort of turn to your own perspective. Patricia, in your own life, either your personal or your professional life, what has been the biggest challenge for you during COVID?
Well, I think the biggest challenge for me, because I live alone, has been how do I fill my days? And how do I fill my life with a sense of purpose? So I'm very fortunate to enjoy being with other people and doing things. And the way to do that has been online. So I am active in far too many organizations. I've listed them as my major commitments and then my minor commitments. I think my major commitments probably come to about 7 organizations, and my minor are about 10. So wow. I fill my days online.
So you keep busy.
Yes, I keep busy, but with other people.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
And the other one, of course, I think we'll be talking about is getting out every day into the natural world where
Good.
Pandemic hasn't affected the trees.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Brenda, what about for you? What has been this biggest challenge, perhaps even from your professional experience when you work with counseling clients?
Well, a big challenge I find that professionally, personally, so for many people has been the misinformation that's out there, the false social media posts that we've seen, what to believe, what not to believe. So all of that, being bombarded with it constantly, and having the, when do you step back? When do you stop paying attention to that? There's too much out there that just information, too much information, and absorbing it all is too difficult to do. So that it's just that, it's that misinformation and not really knowing what to believe. That I found that very, very difficult throughout all this.
We are bombarded, aren't we, with all sorts of information from all sorts of different sources. And as you say, which one to believe, which one to, I say to friends, I think the whole structure will be much better next time we have a pandemic. This was a learning experience, I think, for all entities. And what about you, Gerardo? What has been the biggest challenge during this COVID season?
From a professional point of view, I think the biggest challenge I found is how to show empathy. How to show empathy with a mask and with an eyesore. I think the big difficulty I had was how I can show my smile to suffering parents who are worried about their children without being able to smile. That has been very, very difficult. And I think it's not just that difficulty of the mask, but everything has been masked to us. It's not just the medical mask that protect us, but we have to hide it from the others to a certain degree. So this profound sense of isolation. Yes, you can have some connections through the media, through the internet, but for some of us, particularly I think from my age and up, we are very challenged to use the phone and to use the social media to communicate. And I think I saw my kids, for them, they are all time texting and connecting and keeping their social life basically intact. But for many of us, the lack of skills at a technological level have created a profound isolation. So I think the big challenge is that isolation and being masked to our society.
And as you say, particularly relevant for older citizens, that don't have the social media to rely on, that not as comfortable with that. Interesting. Brenda, you've talked a little bit about adaptation and that ability to accept and to adapt. What has helped you develop some resilience during this COVID season?
Learning that new technology that Gerardo talked about. Yeah. Moving the ability to adapt to the new world of living online. I don't like it. I don't want to be here. I want to be seeing people face to face. But I also know that if I do want to see people, this is the way to do it. And if I did not allow myself to learn how to use Zoom and some of the other platforms, that I would have felt even more isolated than I do at this point. So that's what I have found, that really learning this new technology, reaching out to get help if I need help from somebody, if I don't understand something, and then reaching out to other people on the technology. And
part of the adaptation that you said earlier, that idea, that ability to adapt, that we can't just sit back and rely on things the way they used to be. We have to reach out and use this new technology to connect with others. Yes, wonderful. Patricia, you teased us a little earlier with your interest in nature as a way of helping. Has nature helped you develop resilience?
Oh, certainly it has. And I've really enjoyed it, as have many people. I live next to the canal. So every day people are out there, have been now for over a year, have been out there enjoying walking or cycling or skating, or even snowshoeing along the canal. So it's not that people have just done it so it's a way to get together with someone, but people are out there just beginning to really understand and live with nature, because we share life with nature. And so it's a way of finding ourselves in the resilience of nature. Now that the gardening season has started, everyone is so excited about putting their seeds in or their seedlings in and getting out to water them and being part of life. It's realizing that life is much larger than just yourself.
Absolutely. And as you say, we are a part of it. I always think nature is the ultimate example of resilience. No matter what we go through, hurricane, earthquake, even just bad storms, but the next day the sun rises and it's beautiful. You know, there still can be beauty after that.
And the trees are still standing. And the plants
trees are still standing. Yes.
And the snow is still there in the winter.
And Gerardo, what about for you? What has helped you develop resilience?
One thing I tried is to be out of the home at least 3 hours per day.
Wow.
And
wow.
I found a place behind the Ottawa airport where there is a road that basically doesn't have any traffic. So I go there, I bring my lunch there and listen to classical music for about 1 hour. Then I do some walking and reflecting. And I think that reflecting is the thing that has been key for me to find resilience in this time. So I'm being really doing analytical reading of the news. Like Brenda was saying, we are bombarded with so many lies. But at the same time, I think we have to protect from those lies, being more critical about, to try to really squeeze the truth that is behind all of that and really make sense of what is going on and be realistic. I think one of the problems we have with the media is that it sensationalizes everything and make something which is already scary horrible. So try to put realistic things into reality. I think has helped me a lot of that. So I put classical music, walking, being out, and reflecting to be the things who have helped me to find a certain degree of normality.
So again, nature and getting out and having a schedule. These are some things that can help build resilience.
Yeah.
Patricia, what about things that negatively affect our ability to develop resilience? Do you think that there are some qualities or attitudes that we sometimes might have that make it more difficult to be resilient?
I think it is more difficult to be resilient because when you're stuck on hold, you've really got to start finding other avenues that give you life. And we've mentioned, nature, we've mentioned music. Certainly, I find that just seeing people makes me feel better. So we're fighting the tendency, I think, to be depressed. We're finding it by reaching out to others and also being important in other people's lives, adding something to other people's lives. And there are a lot of people that need help, or a lot of people who are living alone and stuck, really stuck on hold. So to call them, or even to go for a walk with them, a socially distanced walk, or to do them a favor, if they need something. And also to be in a bubble. I hope that I'd hate to think that there are people who haven't seen anyone for 14 months or more. So most of us have formed bubbles, and I'm very fortunate to have one child here with his family, and then a friend that I go walking with. So we need that combination of working with the new technologies, willing to try the new technologies because they are challenging for a lot of people, and making contact with other people, as well as just appreciating, that the creation is a very big thing and we're just a small part of it. And I think that's faith in ourselves, but faith in the larger thing about life. And for me, that is a religious thing. It has a religious text as well as an artistic or some other create natural world context. It all has to come together somewhere.
So you're suggesting that if we fail to sort of reach out to others or connect with other people, that can really inhibit our resilience.
That pushes us back. Yeah.
Pushes us back. What about for you, Gerardo, maybe from your professional perspective or your personal perspective? What do you think negatively affects our ability to be resilient?
I think fatigue, emotional fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
I think this, like, we have been having waves with the COVID, but also emotional waves.
Mm-hmm.
So last summer, when the numbers came down, there was kind of a exuberant thing like that. Like, we are over the whole thing. Then comes September, with the return to the school, the numbers start to pick up, and you can sense a sense of despair coming into the people. Then we got Christmas, and then this second wave established themselves, and we feel so tired because of that. We know that another lockdown was in the coming. Then we got to vaccines, and again, euphoria. Oh, it's over, it's over. And then we hit the third wave, and I see like it was uh, like a collapse of the hope the vaccines have provided suddenly bring us completely down, because a hope that we had basically disappeared. And that, I think, is what I have finding more difficult to deal, is how to regain this emotional strength, how to overcome this fatigue of emotionally being able to respond. And again, that is the question of resilience.
Mhm.
That is how to overcome my personal emotional fatigue. And I think that is what I think the, the only way to do that is to connect, to feel in communion,
Yes.
to grieve together, so that we can hope together.
Oh, that's a great point. Grieve together so we can hope together. I don't think a lot of people realize what it takes out of us. As you say, the high and then the despair, and then the hope and then the despair again. And that's what this last
Yeah.
15, 16 months at this time has been. It's been a series of that. And that's very emotionally and physically fatiguing
Yeah.
on people to go through those highs and lows. Interesting. Brenda, what about you? What do you think that can sometimes lead to an inability to be resilient? What are some attitudes or qualities?
Well, I certainly hear what Gerardo was saying about the exhaustion, the mental exhaustion. How, and for people who are resilient, they might bounce back quicker. You know, they have those skills, but for people who don't have those skills, it's going to be tough. And then, so where do we get those skills from? Are we born with them? Is it something we can develop? A bit of both, probably. I find that in my practice, we talk a lot about that, and while we don't maybe talk about resilience all the time, I think that's the undercurrent of a lot of the discussions I've been having over the past year. People who have maybe a more pessimistic outlook on life, who tend to view things glass half empty, a little bit more negative, maybe aren't as flexible in their thinking. They tend to be sort of stuck, having a harder time coping with the pandemic. Their resiliency isn't as strong as people who are more positive, who've been out there making connections. The isolating yourself, fear, being afraid. And there are a lot of people who are very afraid. And how to deal with that. Connecting, what Gerardo said, right? Reaching out, getting help if you need it. And then for those of us that might be a little more resilient, recognizing it in other people that maybe they're struggling and reaching out to them. So working both ways, making those connections. Don't let yourself be alone. Try to find somebody to talk to.
Do you think, Brenda, that people are born optimistic, or is that something that people can learn?
I think it's definitely something people can learn. Absolutely. Yeah. Certainly we're not everybody is an optimist by nature, but I think that by self-reflection and some self-care, it's definitely a skill that you can improve on. Yes.
They can learn some strategies that can help them develop a more optimistic attitude.
Yes. Yes,
Interesting.
absolutely.
Interesting. Gerardo, it's not all been a bad news story, COVID. I mean, it's been very difficult for some people and absolutely life-changing for many. But we still do hear sometimes of positive stories that have come out of it. Is there something that you've learned or gained during this last COVID season?
Definitely, there was something that surprised me. Is I was so happy to be in Canada.
Ah,
I was so happy to live in Canada during this pandemic. Like I say in French, chapeau to the Canadians that in the vast majority, we responded appropriately. We keep our distance. We mask ourselves. We were in solidarity for the others. We did that for ourselves and for the others. In comparison to what I see through the media happening in the rest of the world, we did what we have to do. Yes, we make mistakes. Yes, there was a lot of misleading sometimes from our leaders. But as a community, we responded. And I think that is what I learned, that we were emotionally and community ready to handle a difficult time. And we did well. That is what I learned the most.
yes. Well, that's a bit of good news to come out of it. And
Yeah.
what about you, Patricia? What have you learned during this COVID season?
Well, I think I have learned to be more grateful. I am very grateful that I live in comfort. It might be restricted, but I'm very thankful that I live in a nice part of town. I live in a comfortable place. I am very grateful also for a deeper understanding and appreciation of my kids, my two sons and their families, and the fact that they're putting up with this online learning while working at home. I have a different appreciation of my sons, of people's lives, I mean, other people's lives through them. And I guess the most important daily one is that I really have learned to appreciate that I share life with the natural world. That and the natural world is the large world, you know, but in particular, I can look out and see things growing or see things surviving, you know, through the long winter and coming to life again. I think that I hadn't really understood some of these things, the depth that I feel them now.
Wonderful. And I think you had mentioned earlier that you had a quote you wanted to share with us.
Yes, I did. In fact, what I wanted to do, and some people will be familiar with Viktor Frankl. Here's his book, The Man's Search for Meaning. I'm sure that our panelists are very familiar with it, but for those who don't know, Viktor Frankl was a doctor who was in Germany during Nazi times and was in a concentration camp, as was his wife in a separate one. And what he said after the oppression was, how did he deal with that oppression that he felt and that was very real? So I'll just give you a very small quote, but I think it's helpful for everyone. We who lived in concentration camps can remember the men who walked through the huts, comforting and giving away their last piece of bread. They may have been few in number, but they offer sufficient proof that everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way.
Wonderful, powerful.
So I think that says it all. I mean, for those of us who are stronger, maybe more resilient, we've always got to remember that the choice of what we do is ours and how we look at life is ours.
It's always our choice. And Brenda, what about for you? What have you learned during this last time?
I've learned that I don't mind, living a bit slower, not having the fast pace of life that was there before. Nature as well. I as well live in a comfortable home, am close to nature. I have my family with me. I've learned to be thankful, right? To really, truly be thankful for my health and my family, my friends, to have gratitude, be grateful for life, for being healthy, and for, just for life in Canada, like Gerardo said as well. We are a lucky society, right? We truly are.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of us are much more appreciative of things that we may have taken for granted before. And
Right.
certainly that appreciation adds to our resilience. So I thank our panel members today for sharing their thoughts on it. For those of you who are watching, hopefully that's got you started thinking about resilience, more specifically your own resilience. And if there are more supplies that you want to build up in terms of your own resilience, we're having part 2 of this session. And that will take place on Monday, June 28th from 10 to 12. It'll be an interactive virtual workshop that will give you an opportunity to take a deeper dive into this topic of resilience during COVID. And what it will entail will be 30 minutes with each of our 3 speakers, and they'll give you some more practical strategies, let you share some feedback, give you some tips and hints, and hopefully you'll leave with some very concrete ideas of how you can build your own resilience stores. So if you are subscribed to the Council on Aging's info flash, watch for information there about advertising. If you are not, you can go to the COA website in Ottawa, and it's just coaottawa.ca. Yes, .com. So coaottawa.ca. You'll be able to register there. And we look forward to seeing you on June 28th. And until then, please stay safe.